Gorbachev.
Sure.
He knew the square wheels weren't going to work, but he couldn't bring himself to go to round. He would go to egg-shaped or oval, and you can't do that. So he was better than what they had, but not good enough. And Reagan just wiped up the floor with him.
And he did at least preside over the end peacefully.
He did. He didn't pull the trigger.
Right.
He didn't pull the trigger, and he could have.
Yes.
So that he gets credit for.
Right.
But what he does not get credit for is not recognizing that he was only willing to go halfway to where he had to go. He thought he could save communism in the Soviet Union. He thought that glasnost and perestroika would do it, when in fact it was going from square wheels to oval-shaped wheels. Nice try, but you're not going to make it. And he never understood that that wasn't going to work.
You know, a sad part of this, on the plus side, Ronald Reagan lived to see all this, just to see the collapse. In fact, he saw the collapse before. He told the world he had Alzheimer's in 1994, so he got to watch the wall fall. I mean, he enjoyed all of it. But Casey never lived to see this.
No,
he died in 1987.
He did.
What do you think he expected this? Reagan said, "Yeah, I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but yeah, he predicted it. I expected it to happen." But what about Casey? What was he thinking in 86, 87? Was he optimistic?
He was always optimistic. He was at the end of his career, and suddenly he was back at the CIA, and he thought God gave him one more chance. He wasn't going to waste it, and he was going to get these guys. And he was going after him with everything he got. He terrified the Kremlin.
They hated him.
They hated him. But again, he was as old as they were and as tough as they were, and he just wasn't playing games. So they hated him because they knew he was the real danger. He was tough. So yeah, I think he knew where that was going to go.
Well, 7:50 on the clock. We've been talking 45 minutes. I'm going to start to transition into taking some questions from the audience, but I'd like to ask you a couple things about where we are today, because this is this is what you do now. I mean, you're an analyst today. The post-Cold War world, a couple of different things. One, on Russia today, I know you have a lot of thoughts. Richard Pipes, who was here a few years ago, told us that it's a shame, because he said this isn't exactly what we fought for. He said, I'm glad that the Cold War is over. It's not a totalitarian communist state, but he's not real happy with Vladimir Putin, I guess the current leader.
Yeah.
I mean, he's supposed to not be the prime minister anymore, the leader anymore.
Yeah. Well, we learned a lot about KGB commissars in the Cold War.
And he was
one of the things, he was one of them. One of the things we learned is they are incapable of learning from experience. And he's driving Russia into the same ditch that the communists drove it into in the 20th century. So it's a tragedy. It's too bad. There isn't going to be a second Cold War. Russia doesn't have the strength for that. They can't mount that kind of global, decades-long struggle. So they used to be a global menace. Now they're a pain in the world's rear end. And that's what they want. It's going to be sloppy.
But they may have more money, right?
Well, not really. It's
Saudi Arabia with...
What Putin wants is three things. First, he wants to get back control of the near abroad, which is what they call the countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union and are now independent. Georgia, which he's hit already. Ukraine, which is probably next on the list. And the Baltic countries and so forth. He wants them back. If he can't get them back covertly, he'll hit them.
Does he want them back for economics?
No, he wants them back, period. Second, Russia wants not only to be the world's leading producer of energy, it wants to lead the world's energy producers. Basically, Russia wants control of OPEC. And that's why Putin's flying around trying to cut deals with Chavez in Venezuela, with the Iranians. What he's basically saying is, look, you guys are tough, but I'm tougher. If we team up, OPEC and Russia, if you will, boy, could we stick it to them. It's like a nukes. So that's where he's going with that. That's a dicey thing.
It's a scary thing.
It's a very scary thing. And Russia is the world's leading energy producer. I mean, they're not kidding here. So they're trying to basically run OPEC.
And they're not communist anymore. So
no,
I mean, the money will work in the economy.
The money will work.
Produce GDP.
Yeah. And the third thing Putin wants, or Russia wants, is to trip us up. I mean, it's not much of a goal, but that's what they want. Anytime they can, stick a spike in the wheels, they'll do it. So those three things are going to be a real nuisance for President Obama to deal with. I don't think it'll be another Cold War, but it's going to be a real pain in the rear end.
Is the war on terror, the war against radical Islamic fundamentalism, the new Cold War?
Yes, but it's a new Cold War in the sense that that's the big threat. So yes, in that sense it is. When President Reagan set out to end the Cold War, I said that it sent a shockwave through the bureaucracy. What a lot of people don't realize is the Cold War was such a way of life that it was a profession. We were Cold Warriors. There used to be a profession. People would become arms controllers. They'd take PhDs in arms control, and they'd be arms controllers, and when they would get ready to retire, they would get jobs for their kids. It's like being the electricians union, you know?
So they made their living off the existence
of the Cold War,
Cold War.
And Reagan was ending it. And one reason you had so much opposition from the bureaucracy is, hey, guys, that's our jobs.
Yeah. I mean, you actually encountered that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people who really liked things the way they were.
Because that was their
status
job.
Quo.
Yeah,
sure.
that's what they knew. So that was a real shock. What worries me a little bit is we're setting into the same pattern with the war on terror. We're beginning to think, like we did with the Cold War, that it's a feature of life on Earth. All you can do is not lose.
That it'll be here for the next 70 years.
Right, and now you can get a PhD in terrorism and homeland security and a master's degree. It's becoming a profession.
That's true.
And
you can get degrees in those things.
You can get degrees in it.
That's right.
And we may be settling into the same kind of mindset, which is the best any leader can do is not lose.
And not make them mad.
And not make them mad, not make it too much worse. And maybe one day there'll be another Reagan who says, why should we live like this? Is there a way to end it? So I'm a little concerned with slipping into the same decades-long process we did before.
But it should be more difficult to end, should it not? Because with the Cold War, your target was really the one country, the Soviet Union. Here, it's not just Iran. It wasn't just Iraq. It wasn't just Afghanistan. I mean, this is an ideology. So is communism.
It is, and it's very different.
Is it deterrable in the way that the Soviets?
Well, that's the question. What I have not seen take place is any conference on how can we win the war on terrorism. Basically, it's all how can we not lose. Yeah. And this is the kind
Why
of thing.
Why do they hate us?
Yeah. But what I think we need to turn our attention to, is there a way to end this thing? Now, maybe the answer is no. But my gut feel is the answer is yes, if we're willing to think in different ways and do some different things.
We need to get creative.
We do.
Maybe get a little 15 different
maybe get a little tougher too.
Right.
But part of the problem is we don't have the kind of intelligence service we should.
Any questions? If anybody wants to come up or line up, or now on the intelligence, pick up on that. What do you mean we don't have the kind of intelligence?
After 9/11, well, what happened is this: after the Reagan years ended, the CIA got sloppy again. Now the Cold War was over. In the 1990s, our clandestine service, the spooks, were basically fired. They were all dumped.
And those are the people that you need.
Those are the
people in the Middle East, on the ground.
Right.
Who could
they weren't
speak
there
Arabic.
When 9/11 came. That's one of the reasons you had 9/11. After 9/11, President Bush should have rebuilt the CIA. He should have created another OSS. That was the model to go for. But instead of building an intelligence service that looked like the OSS, President Bush built an intelligence service that looked like General Motors.
And he didn't
It's
have...
big, sloppy, committee on top of committee. He never did that.
And he didn't have a Bill Casey either.
Didn't have a Bill Casey.
He brought in George Tenet, carried over from the Clinton years.
Yeah, and that was, no one could understand why he would do that. But he never had his guys. He certainly never had someone like a Bill. And that was a big mistake. And that kind of left us to storm. And it hurt the president. By the way, I was talking with Bill one night. And remember, Bill had background in politics and intelligence because he had that kind of odd career. And he said something I never forgot. We were just having a drink or something. And he said, Herb, you ever get to be president, first thing you do is get control of the Justice Department and the CIA. And I said, why? He said, those are the two agencies that can destroy a president. And I remember thinking, whoa.
Yeah, he was right.
President Bush, George W. did not get control of justice, and he did not get control of CIA, and it virtually destroyed him. He never learned that lesson.
Go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Meyer, for your creativity, your hard work, your intelligence, and your courage to do all that you did during that period. And speaking of today and the need for a president to be really understanding of what's going on at the CIA, what do you think of the president's nominee, Leon Panetta, to be our new director of the CIA?
Great question.
But when the president appointed him, I was in my office, and a friend of mine called. He runs a conservative talk show on radio. He said, "Herb, would you come on the show and talk about the news?" I said, "What news?" He said, "The president named Leon Panetta to the CIA." I said, "Greg, I'm kind of busy. What's up?" And he said, "No, I'm not kidding. The president named Panetta to the CIA." I said, "Greg, I'll help you if I can, but come on, cut the baloney. What's going on?" And he said, "Really?" Right. I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely no sense. Panetta is not a genius, but he's a budget guy.
Yeah.
He's never been a foreign affairs. It's a whole. So I don't get it. This is crazy. That may be the first stupid thing Obama's done.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't expect to like what Obama's done. That's a different thing. People disagree. But this struck me as stupid. And I don't get it.
You know, you got to say, this is probably the fourth time tonight I've asked you to repeat this story, but when I picked him up earlier, this is funny, he's watching C-SPAN and he's watching the CIA confirmation hearings. I mean, what else would he be watching but something on C-SPAN about the CIA? But they were talking to Leon Panetta, and they were asking him about the ticking bomb scenario. Now, explain this. This is really remarkable.
The ticking bomb scenario is the hypothetical case when we find out that the terrorists have planted a nuclear bomb in one of our cities, Pittsburgh, Dallas, or Chicago, and we've caught one of the terrorists, and we need to know where's the bomb so we can disarm it. That's the ticking bomb scenario. And the question is, under those circumstances, would you waterboard the guy or go
Would you
beyond
torture
it?
the guy?
Personally, I would start with waterboarding, and if that didn't work, then I'd get nasty, okay? Anyway, Panetta's testifying today, okay? And all the senators wanted, they forced him, it didn't take much, to promise the senators.
These are Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, that under no circumstances, not even that scenario, would they use any coercive means. I was watching this on TV. So all the hearings, I watched about an hour of it before you picked me up, all the senators were concerned about were the rights of the terrorist who's trying to nuke one of our cities.
Yeah.
There was no question in the hour that I watched about the rights of their own constituents surviving an attack or not being attacked.
So in other words, they would rather
lunacy.
You should let the bomb go off rather than waterboard the guy.
Well, against Washington, you never get to the bottom of anything. What Panetta didn't do, and what no one in that position is going to do as a Panetta, is say, wait a minute. One of these guys was Senator Wyden from Portland, Oregon, and Wyden was going on and on about this. What he didn't say is, wait, hang on a second. If the bomb's in Portland, you tell me, do you want me to just hand this guy a Koran and say, it's okay, shame about all those cities in Portland, or you want me to break his fingers? And make Wyden say what he wanted.
Yes,
now, that doesn't happen.
Senator, look into the camera and tell your constituents in Oregon right now.
They're your constituents.
Right,
do you want me? How far do you want me to go? That doesn't happen. Okay? So basically, Panetta promised that under even those circumstances, the ticking time bomb scenario, we would not use any coercive means.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, whether that's the case or not is another story.
Right.
But what message is that sending to the world? And what message is that sending to our own citizens?
Yeah.
And by the way, what message does it send to a Putin?
Sure.
Because if he's thinking of hitting the Ukraine, he wants the Navy base at Sevastopol, which is in the Ukraine.
They probably thought the whole thing was hilarious, to tell you the truth.
They probably couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You know. So that's what we were watching on television. That we'll say.
Yes, sir.
Two questions. One just personal. Did the OSS have anything to do with what went on in Bletchley Park? And the second one, if it's fair to ask, how confident are you of the CIA today?
Yikes. As far Bletchley Park was the British code-breaking operation. And sure, the OSS and Bletchley Park worked very closely together. And the Bletchley Park is sort of legendary. I mean, there have been great movies and books about it, but that was the British, what we would now call the NSA. Those were the code breakers, the original code breakers. Alan Turing worked there, and he invented the computer, basically.